we play the hits a little bit, and I'm curious about the time that you inked a page or two of Dark Knight Returns. I remember a piece that you wrote online, but I never heard you on the record speak about it. Welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piskor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
It is the new year, and today we are welcoming Uncle Todd McFarlane to send everybody good cheer. Jimmy, give a little bibliography. We could jump right into things.
Oh man, co-creator of Venom, shattered sales records with Spider-Man #1, formed Image Comics, launching the biggest independent selling comic, Spawn #1, has surpassed records with the self-published creator-owned Spawn, approaching issue 350 now. And if that all wasn't enough, built McFarlane Toys into one of the biggest toy companies on Earth.
Todd, thanks for joining us, sir.
Sure. Happy New Year to both of you.
The new year, it's a time of new beginnings, but I always think of it as a time of gratitude as well. So can you name maybe a handful or three people who in the comic book business are some of the most important people to you who helped get you to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, if you go way back, my very first job was given to me by Archie Goodwin. He was an editor. So again, sometimes you hear people like give Hall of Fame speeches and they talk about their high school coach, right? The people that helped sort of put them on the path that was like the first couple steps, and then you didn't know what was going to happen. But if Archie doesn't give me a job, also a sideways a tap on the back to Ann Nocente, because I had sent my samples to Ann, and Ann was in the X-Men office, and she walked them across the hall to Archie, who was in charge of at that time, they called the Epic line at Marvel. And then he handed it to Steve Englehart, who ended up giving me the job. So, but Archie is sort of the editor who said yes, right? And Ann and obviously Steve, since it was his book, Steve Englehart, it was his book. I mean, they're there. After the Coyote series went away after 3 or 4 months, I was sort of unemployed again. And then a guy by the name of Roy Thomas stepped in. Roy was the one that took over essentially the writing at Marvel after Stan Lee left in the mid '60s, and he was seemed like everything at DC at that point. But he basically said, "Hey Todd, I'll give you a job. I'll give you your first regular job." He gave me my first monthly book, and essentially said, "I'll keep you employed for the rest of your life." And I think he would have. If I wanted to, he would have, because he's been in the business forever. He would have just kept doing it. Eventually, I ended up going and stretching my wings because I actually wanted to know whether I was in the business because of Roy Thomas at that time, or whether I actually had value to other people. So it went there, and then just sort of as I got a little bit older, I was able to spend a lot of time with Stan Lee, and his influence was more gentleman. Not that he was the giant that he was, and he created all those characters. Nobody's going to come close to that. That's just like, that's a whole nother planet of skill set. It was observing him and watching him interact with his fans, right? George Perez was staggeringly good too at doing that. So I always admired people who treated the people on the other side of the table with the same reverence that they were giving you, right? Because I remember, being on that side of the table, and I remember feeling good when somebody was nice to you, right? And so it was like, okay. And when somebody wasn't nice, I remember that it wasn't a good feeling walking away from that person, and so I just went, no, you treat your fans good. And when I saw people, and Stan being one of them, that did it as good as anybody, and he had to do it every 20 seconds, right? Somebody's in front of you, you have to do it every 20 seconds. It has to be the most meaningful 20 seconds of that person's life, and he had it down. Those were sort of moments of there. And then, and I know I'm going way past 3. And then my whole cadre of image founders, right? I mean, we did, sometimes people sort of miss a word, and they go, "Hey, Todd helped start Image," like with his partners, or Todd co-founded, right? Like it was a team effort by all of us. So.
It's fun. We've been going through Wizard magazines on the channel, kind of looking at that 90s history and
Oh, yeah.
reliving Image's early years. And we're, I don't know, 4 or 5 years into their coverage. And there's still, at that time, some ideas of like Image may still fail, some controversy will come up or creators will, come and go. And it's still a topic. It's so interesting when you think of here we are over 30 years later and, one of the biggest comic book companies.
It was interesting because we had at that time, we had sported 2 enemies, those that were our naysayers, which is okay. And then ourselves, right? We were young, idealistic creators. And we weren't business people. This is the piece. We had to literally skin our knees and fall down a lot of times trying to figure out what it meant to basically say you wanted to do it on your own and have personal freedom, right? Again, the easy one was, I just want to draw what I want to draw. It wasn't that easy, we found out, all of us. And so we each succeeded and failed to different degrees within that group, which makes, I think, for the fascination of the autopsy of Image comic books, if you look at those first 5-8 years, right? Because that was like, we were still trying to find our way. And just when you thought you were finding your way, something big comes, right? Like Jim Lee leaving, right? All of a sudden, like, whoa, now that's a whole nother set of issues we have to deal with. So,
Todd, since you mentioned Jim Lee leaving, that's a story that I was following as a fan, and I haven't heard a lot of people that were close to that talk about it. What do you remember about that happening? Was that blindsiding? I mean, how do you look at that now when you reflect on it?
I think there's 2 perspectives, right? And I may have it wrong. Jim Lee is the one that has all the right answers here. There's two answers. From a business end, yes, nobody wanted to lose Jim Lee and his books in his studio. I mean, it was a gut punch to Image comic book. But on the personal front, Jim had gone through a personal tragedy. And again, until each of us are sort of in those same spots, you don't really know how you're going to react to it, right? And at times, life can just be heavy. And sometimes you want to lighten your burden at any given time, good, bad, or different. Again, everybody has hindsight. I don't know if Jim wishes he had or hadn't or whatever else, or he thinks it was the best decision he ever made. You'll have to ask him. But I know he was going through some personal stuff, and running a studio and being the boss and being at the point of that spear was just not where he wanted to be emotionally, given all the other stuff. So his reasons for going are completely justified. From a selfish business point of view, oh man, we just lost Jim Lee, right? And we had to really, that was one of the big, I mean, there was a lot of big moments, but that was one of the biggest moments, because what people don't really, I think, understand what happened at that moment was, because Rob Liefeld had left. And so we had lost 2 of the partners. But what was an impact to the business at that point was we had a contract with Diamond, and we got most favored nations. We were on the same scale as Marvel and DC. And that was predicated upon one thing: market share. Because Diamond couldn't justify giving us the same that they were giving Marvel and DC unless we held a certain percentage, and they could look Marvel and DC in the eye and go, hey, they're one of our top 3, right? When Jim Lee decided to take his books away from Image, you can imagine those books got counted over on DC side of the ledger, and Image went down. And by going down, we actually went below the threshold of the most favored nation. And we knew that was going to be detrimental to trying to grow the company and get new creators, because it meant we got like covers on the Diamond catalog. It meant that we got certain sort of privileges that you wouldn't have gotten if you were any other company other than the big three. And we knew if we lost that, then creators would go, well, how are you going to promote me? And so I had to call in a favor, and I had to, ask Steve Jeppe, head of Diamond, to give us 60 days, right? Give us a little bit of time. If at the end of 60 days, 90 days, we are not back up over that threshold, then take it all away from us, right? As you have the right to do. But just, I'm asking, give us a little bit of time, because this came out of left field. And Steve was gracious enough to do it. And I would argue, gentlemen, that it was really an inflection moment, because we then couldn't be so reliant on the original founders at that point. And we had to go and look and be even more aggressive with bringing on other people so that they could sort of make up for the loss of Jim Lee. Some of us, like myself and Mark Silvestri and Eric Larson, we added more books so that we could pick up some of the slack, but we still needed help. And I think it was sort of the beginning of the real success of Image Comics, and how eclectic we are in the number of books, and not worrying about whether they were all superhero books done by the hot artists on Wizard, blah, 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 blah. So although it was a negative when Jim left and took his books in the studio, it forced us to grow up. And I think that is now, I think, one of the strengths of Image comic books like today. So I think we survived all those years. That moment forced us to rebuild ourselves.
That's fascinating. Thanks so much for sharing that piece, because I don't think I've heard it articulated so well before. So thanks for giving us that little piece on the record.
This video is brought to you by the comics that we make. My latest, Street Angel Princess of Poverty and Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive. Collect all of my Street Angel comics, both volumes available now. True Crime Funnies, BW Zine, and 1986 Zine are my self-published efforts. You can get those at patreon.com/JimRugg or jimrugg.com. And Hulk Grand Design, my contribution to the Grand Design series from Marvel Comics. Ed Piskor's latest, Switchblade Shorties, is now available online. Follow the Cartoonist Kayfabe, Ed Piskor, or Switchblade Shorties accounts to read a daily comic strip featuring the Switchblade Shorties. Hip Hop Family Tree Omnibus, featuring 150 extra pages in addition to the entire Hip Hop Family Tree comic book series. X-Men Grand Design, all 3 volumes now in one easy to find trade paperback. And the latest volume of Red Room, Crypto Killers, and a reminder that all of the Red Room volumes are self-contained. Pick up any volume is the perfect place to begin. And now back to our video.
And where we're at in our Wizard coverage, which is really us just retrospectively looking at that period of time, which is the time period that we grew up in, where we kind of solidified our ideas of growing up to become comic creators. Where we're at right now is Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee are doing the Heroes Reborn thing, and you guys are on the record like, God damn it, I'm glad I don't have a studio and I don't have to make these kind of decisions and keeping people employed when the business of comics is kind of imploding. But at the stage we're at right now, I think you have a book a week coming out. Is that true? And what is that like for you? It sounds like it must be some kind of a pressure cooker.
No, not for me. I was pretty diligent of saying that I wanted to do 50 issues of Spawn before I got too distracted.
Right.
And the reason is because I wanted to plant and dig in deep that brand, that logo, that character. Because I thought if I sort of scattered myself and I scattered the character, and I came with a bunch that I don't know. I just wanted one big giant oak tree in the front, to just go there. Everything sort of comes from that a little bit. So I think I did maybe a couple miniseries or something like that, but I wasn't really doing a lot. I mean, we had I don't know when it came out, stuff like Sam and Twitch was a regular book for a while, and Hellspawn, but it wasn't in an organized growth fashion like it is right now, where we literally are doing a book a week.
Right.
Because it was, as you mentioned, Mark Silvestri and Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee, they were like the studio guys. And then Eric Larson and Jim Valentino and myself, we were sort of the solo artist, right? He was doing, Jim Valentino was doing Nighthawk, and Eric was doing Savage Dragon, I was doing Spawn. We were sort of focused on our guys and got a little myopic on our guys, while the other three were expanding characters and books and titles and their studios and stuff like that. But as to your point, it all came with growing pain, right? And so as part of that, Rob and Jim, for whatever reason, whether it was creatively, financially, or both, decided they were going to go jump on that. Again, I'm on record as saying I was like, I've always been, and I think will continue to be, the most militant. That I voiced my opinion many, many, many times, to the point they probably got bored of it. I'm just saying that I just thought it was a conflict of interest. It was, and the conflict to me was, and it was always the piece that I think people miss, is that you have to split yourself into two people. I'm not saying that it was a conflict of interest for Rob Liefeld, the creative guy who owned Extreme Studios, or that it was a conflict of interest for Jim Lee, who owned Wildstorm. And even sometimes I get put into a situation that's not a conflict for Todd, who owns Todd McFarlane Productions. I think it's a conflict when you go, we're also executors of Image. That's the piece. So, yes, as a creative person, as a guy running a studio, yes, I get it. But I can't, for me personally, I'm not talking about anybody else, I'm talking about me. I can't get over the fact that I'm the president of Image Comics. So if I do a cover, and I used to get offers all the time, hey, Todd, you want to do a Venom cover? The answer is yes. Todd, the creator, yes. Would it be cool? Yes. But I can't, because how do I, as president over here, now I'm the other Todd, how do I, as president of Image Comic Books, stand up on a panel trying to recruit people to come and do independent comic books, when their first question could be, well, then why'd you do a Venom cover? Why are you working for Marvel? I don't have an answer for that question. So for me, I thought that the only way to basically be able to go out there and recruit people with a straight face was to not be basically having a conversation that was do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
And I was like, how are we recruiting people when you guys are working for Marvel and DC? Like, how's that recruiting going? Right. But anyways, I put 51% weight in my decision making as sort of the president of Image Comic Books, and I could never get over that. I can't be endorsing a direct competitor. I couldn't do that mentally.
So
all my other partners were able to do it over the years. I wasn't. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying I couldn't turn that switch off in my head.
I think the bigger question is very curious what it's like to put out a book a week. Are you putting fires out constantly, or is it a well-oiled machine? Tell us about that.
Yeah, no, it's. I thought it was going to be, because for years we were just doing kind of the odd miniseries. Now we literally have a book a week, right? Because we've got Spawn, King Spawn, Gunslinger, and Score, right? And we've got a handful of books coming down the pipeline for 2024 this year that is only going to sort of expand that. But it just becomes robotic a little bit, you don't allow for any other option other than getting the book done. That's it. And so I've run into situations where I assume Marvel and DC must run into it dozens of times a month because they put out way more books, where the writer doesn't get his work in or her work in. They're sick. Somebody in the family has an issue. The dog ate the homework, and you multiply that by writer, penciler, inker, letterer, colorist. I mean, life just gets in the way sometimes, and you have to adjust. And so you have to adjust in a way that also keeps your deadlines going, right? So there's two ways I adjust is I try to get my artist to be as honest as possible. I'm not saying, guys, you have to do every single page for the rest of your life. I just need to know more than 10 minutes in advance, because hard for me to find a replacement, whether that's for 2 pages, 5 pages, 10 pages, or the entire issue. I need a little bit of heads up. Now, again, there are moments where none of us can sort of foresee, sort of tragic moments where they just sort of blindside everybody. Okay, you just deal with those. But again, I should have a couple of fill-in issues sitting on the side in case of those moments come up. But the way that I do is I just either then go and find somebody that can help fill in, or, and this may horrify the writers of the world out there, I usually don't plot and think of my stories in detail very far in advance. Right? I have big ideas of where I want to move the pieces on the chessboard, but it doesn't. I mean, I know that the queen's got to get from this side of the chessboard to the other side. That's all. That's enough. What the moves are to get there are flexible to me. So that means if my artist phones me up and says, "Oh my God, I'm sick. I'm going to be down for 3 days," and I've only given them half the plot, because a lot of times I don't give them the full plot. It means that the back half of that issue, I simplify his drawing. Now, how do you do that? Well, I was an artist and I used to draw those issues. I know how this is done. You make it so there's not 50 people in the scene. You put them in a place that's isolated. You make sure that there's a lot of shadows and it's nighttime. You do a page which is why I have the reporter's page. I could throw a reporter's page in. That page is done. It's just 3 heads. Boom, you're done. There, you just got a page done. So I'm very skilled at figuring ways to help my artists get through their monthly deadlines. And for the most part, I think they're thankful for that. I try to sort of walk some of my writers through that of going, you at times you've got to adjust to the artist because of all the work, and it's not even bias. I think it's just physically true. It's the most manual physical work is drawing, taking a blank piece of paper and filling it with pencil, right? You have to do all the thinking and then the drawing of it. And so we have to be mindful of that so that we don't burn our pencilers out. Because again, like you and I, when you find somebody on a book that you really like, you want them to be on there for a while. And the best way to keep them on there for a while is to not burn them out. The best way to not burn them out is to make it reasonable to meet their deadlines. I have said before, of all the jobs in comic book, penciling a monthly comic book is the hardest job. I think it's the most rewarding job, but I know it's the hardest job. And so, and I've taken people who are not monthly comic book artists and converted them into it, and they built up the muscle, and they actually, in hindsight, sort of see, wow, doing 15 issues, 20 issues of any comic book has a value.
So Todd, you're president of Image Comics. This time of year, end of the year, people reflect on where the comics industry is. And I wonder, where you see it. There's a lot of talk. I think it's been going on as long as I've been alive, that comics are, going downhill or collapsing or whatever. What do you see as a comics publisher? How is the comic book market? How's it look to you?
Okay, here I learned a long time ago. Name's Todd, only rhymes with God, right? I control one human being's sort of actions, my own. If the comic book industry as a whole wants to be super creative and come up with a bunch of stuff and expand, what I'm doing within that is not really going to move the direction one way or the other. Conversely, if the comic book industry people want to basically figure out a suicide mission, my couple books are not going to stop that. I can't. I don't have. I wish I had more power than that. I don't. All I have control over is putting out quality books on a timely basis at a fair price. That's what I control. If there's 10,000 stores, I'm going to sell X number of books. And if there's 2,000 stores, for whatever reason, I'm going to sell 1/5 of that X number of books. So why sales grow and contract throughout the times? I have my opinions, but I don't have any control over it. So I don't really spend a lot of time dissecting it. Marvel's going to do what Marvel thinks is best, good, bad, or indifferent. Here's all I do from my 30,000-foot view. Whatever it is that you're doing, there should only be one goal, and this should be the same for anybody who runs sort of any company. Are you selling more of what you make? That's it. Period. Done. Finito. That's the question of the day. So if I step back and I look at the comic book industry for the last 30, 35 years, are we selling more comic books today than we were 35 years ago? The answer is no. No. So I could argue that whatever all of us have been doing is wrong. Why? Because we've contracted. Now, there was also a period where we were pretty tight, maybe 5, 10 years ago. And then the pandemic came and some other stuff, and we went up. So whatever we were doing prior to that, we actually decided to do some new things, and we expanded. Cool. So we've had moments where there were dozens of books that sold over 100,000 a month. I'm talking about in the industry, right? And then we got to places where there were sometimes a month where there was only one book that sold 100,000. One. And then we had moments a couple years ago where there were like half a dozen, right? So we're constantly fluctuating, but the overall health of the industry has to be a group effort, both from the publishers and the creators, the fan base, and the stores. Everybody has to do it. If any one of us basically does something terribly wrong, it's going to affect the others. If we start putting out junky comic books, then of course the fans shouldn't support junky comic books. And then they're not going to buy them. If they don't buy them, there's not going to be as many stores. Or stores that are there are going to sell less. And if they sell less, then the publishers are going to probably want to make up. So all of it is all tied together. And then vice versa. If it goes the other way and you come up with like good books and people are excited and they want to read more, then you can expand upon that, and it grows in the other direction. I don't know. I think we're as good as the skill set that's out there, and some of the business decisions that are made by people who do have influence. Marvel and DC leading the charge. So if they want to bury this industry, that they can do it. Right? And here's the thing. Here's the thing about big companies. Let me just tell you, they don't have all the answers. We like to give them reverence, big companies, but all you have to do is just Google. Go to 1968 and go, who were the companies that were in the Dow? The Dow only has like 25 companies in it at any given time on the stock market. Just Google who those companies were. You're going to be shocked at how many of them are not in the Dow today and how many of them don't even exist. These were considered the biggest companies on our planet, and they don't even exist. Now, here's my question. What day was it that the upper management of those companies thought they were doing a shit job? Never. Never. So, I don't know. Even when you're heading towards a collision, we're not very good on the business side of seeing the collision, right? You're seeing Hollywood struggle right now with like, what do we do? People aren't going to theaters. What do we do? People aren't buying all of our subscription base. We're bleeding money. How do we like? These are people who have power and billions of dollars, and they somehow figured out how to mess things up. Okay, right? Like, Just because you're a human being and you're at the top and they pay you a lot of money doesn't mean you have all the right answers. And at times, history says you actually have the wrong ones. You're just blinded to it. So, I don't know. Well, I'm going to pull out my 4 books and more, and I'm going to do the best I can, and I'll just figure out a way to sell those 4 books, even if the industry wants to collapse. It won't. But I'm at the mercy of it, like everybody else.
Todd, can we play the hits a little bit? And I'm curious about the time that you inked a page or 2 of Dark Knight Returns. I remember a piece that you wrote online, but I never heard you on the record speak about it.
Yeah. So I'm doing Infinity Incorporated at this point. I'm a penciler on a book for 25 issues, and I'm like, oh man, I made it. A monthly comic book. I might even be at that point, starting to get in some of the Wizard Awards, like just starting to make sort of number 6 or 7 or something like that. And I had a friend at the time, and he was trying to break into the business, and it just broke in, and he was had just started as Klaus Jansen's inking assistant. A lot of inkers have inking assistants. And I happened to be in New York. I hadn't gone to New York too many times. I was still young in my career. And I was staying with this particular person, and we were just chit-chatting, and late at night, 11 o'clock, the door knocks. There's Klaus Jansen. I'd never met him. I knew of him. Like, oh my God, the Daredevil inker. And he's got pages of The Dark Knight. Now, we knew Dark Knight was coming out, so we knew it was going to be this big thing from Frank Miller. It was going to be cool. But nobody had seen the pages yet. And he had pages from issue 2, or part 2, whatever you want to call it, of that Dark Knight saga. And he said, hey, and he handed them to my friend. He said, hey, I need you to ink these pages, which I was shocked, because I'm like, this is the biggest event of the year. What are you talking about? You don't hand these to your newbie inker. Like, he's been there for like 1 week. It's like, he doesn't know what he's doing. And it's like, come on, Klaus, come on, man. But he handed the pages, and he said, we got a deadline. I need these. I need to pick them up in the morning. Not only am I going to give them to a guy who's only been employed for like 7 days, but I'm also, I need them overnight. I was like, come on. Anyways, so he left, and my friend took him out. There was more there than he thought. And so it was like, oh my gosh. And then I just went, well, I'll help you. And he's like, yeah, could you, Todd? Right, this is how you just have to hit deadlines. But it's like this big giant book, and they're giving it to schmucks. There's 2 schmucks going to be inking these pages tonight. It shouldn't be. This is blasphemy.
And Todd, have you, at this point, did you ink any of your own stuff professionally yet?
I don't think so. I wasn't an inker at this point.
That's amazing.
He just showed me, like, use this tool, right? And I'm like, oh man, that's cool, super cool. And anyway, so I remember I was doing bricks on the one page where there was an explosion, and I'm acutely aware that it's like, this is the height to me. And then I did like beans, like cans of beans, because it was a scene where Batman was dressed as a fat woman in some kind of grocery store, small convenience sort of mom and pop store, and she's complaining about the price of the beans, right? I'll never get the page, right? It's like something like 7-Eleven has these cheaper, right? Even talking with the lisp, and it was Bruce Wayne in the fat lady's old costume. But I was inking the beans and the bricks and the shelves, and I'm like, oh man, I've made it. I was like, to me, it was like, I've been in the business for probably 2 years at that point, 2.5 years, I don't know. But to me, that was the moment that I go, I made it, because I can say I did bean cans on the Dark Knight someday to my grandkids, right? It was like super. And so, anyways, we passed pages back and forth, and sent them off, and that was it. And to me, for a long time, that was like the highlight of my career. Yeah, I did that book. But look at the bricks on this page. Oh my gosh, that was me. So
that's so fun, man. You know, there's one other piece, one other Wizard piece that is sort of famous on the channel. This cover right here.
Oh yeah,
Frank and Todd doing Spawn and Batman. But there are 2 moons on that cover, Todd. 2 full moons. How does that happen, you think?
because deadlines and us not sort of doing whatever. And I wanted to do a moon anyways. And so as you can, Frank got the page first, as you can see,
Yeah.
and he hogged it. He took the sweet spot and everything around, and then he put. And I'm like, Frank, what? Like, what? I don't even know. What am I supposed to put on? I'm supposed to put this little tiny spawn on it. Like, God damn you, right? And he's like, and so, but he would do it like intentionally because he knew because the Frank Miller that I know is like a youthful child that just likes to bug people too, right? So he was sort of giggling. He's like, "Oh, oops, I guess I did put you in a pickle, Todd," right? But he knew he was going to force me to have to get creative. So I was like, "Okay, we're going to do it." And oh, by the way, Frank, you're not the only damn guy gets to put a moon on this, right? So like that was my thing, and you're gonna do it. So you're gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Screw it. We're gonna both do it. Like who cares? We'll see if anybody notices. Now, man, you're the first one to notice. 40 years later, 30 years later.
Some real value to us going back through these wizards. Can't let that slip by. Todd, you one other thing that you've accomplished is sales of original art. You know, you have sold some very valuable art over the year. Maybe not you.
I didn't sell. I didn't sell them. The people
in particular, but your art has sold.
No. The people I sold them to years ago sold them for a lot of money, not me.
So I wonder, do you collect original art?
Not. I've got a couple pieces, but not in any meaningful. Not in any meaningful way. I used to swap pages, so I have some pages from fellow artists I used to swap. But I don't go out of my way to buy original artwork.
And I would be disgusting some of our fans if I did not ask you, any chance for a Spawn Vault Edition 1 reprint?
Yeah, it actually went over pretty well. I know that people like to see. I mean, all those Vault books. I don't care what company or what character. Anytime you get to see original artwork in its sort of true form, I especially, and maybe again, I'm biased because I'm an artist. They're really intriguing to look at. Just like, is that whiteout and is that a note and did he redraw that and all of it's just sort of fun to see the process. But also you get to see the artwork unadulterated with color and newsprint at that time that can sort of diminish a lot of the details, right? That sometimes you see page in black and white and you go, wow, and then you see it in print and you go, oh, it was pretty good, but it wasn't a wow, right? So, but no, we'll take a look at it, right? For right now, we're just trying to button up Spawn 350 as a story that culminates after the Throne of Hell has been empty literally since issue number 100. So this is 250 issues climax for 350. Besides it's just an anniversary book, we're putting a period on that 250 issue vacancy, and somebody's gonna finally sit on the throne, and then we've got like a big moment starting with 351. It's gonna sort of affect everybody in the Spawn universe in the near future.
Yeah, it's really fun. When we spoke to you last time, it was around issue 300 time, and you were explaining sort of the process where you understood, yeah, people are going to buy 300, but you end that with a cliffhanger to try to get people on board for 301. So that was a cool piece to sort of
well, 301 was the record in my mind, right? Oddly, 301 was the record, right? I'm going for the 300 was the tie,
right?
So I wanted to continue the story that I knew a lot of people come at 300 because it's a big anniversary number for any title. But to me, mentally, 301 was the one. So I tied those two together. And we're going to have like I said, a little bit of a moment like that, starting with 351 because of what happens in 350. It's going to sort of affect the books going forward, and some of the new titles that we have coming out.
Todd, we see a lot of videos of you online drawing, and you draw digitally, at least a lot of the videos that I see of you now. As one of the guys that was so successful on paper, I wonder if you could talk about the difference between drawing digitally versus drawing on paper, and Do you have advantages one way or the other?
Um, I think on paper you can instantly see the thickness and thinness of your lines because it's all there, and nothing is going in and out, in and out, in and out. That can give a bit of a distortion to it. So you have to make your decisions of your thickness of your lines instantly because it's all there. Digitally, the upside of it is to the point that because you can zoom in and go out, you can get as anal. I mean, I now do drawings and I hate myself that I just go, I could blow this up and put it on the side of a building, it will still hold up because I zoom in so close. I'm stupid about it. Um, so but the upside for me is that digitally I can be anywhere in the house anytime during the day. I could be watching TV and I just grab my iPad and I can finish inking and don't have to be afraid that I'm going to spill the ink on or make a mess or whatever else. So it's I can be on an airplane. I could be in the back of a car. I mean, it's portable and it's instantaneous. You hit a button, you're on, and you continue and you continue. Um, Tough to do that when you're doing it physically. You have to sort of stop and set up shop a little bit. So to me, that's efficiency of getting it done at a, I don't know. It is faster in terms of the whites and adding the blacks and doing some effects and stuff like that. Oh, that's way, 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 way faster. I don't know that it's faster line count because I can zoom in, so I get anal and I add more lines to my digital stuff than I was doing on paper because I'm stupid that I draw lines that literally my eye can't focus on. Your eye couldn't focus on it, and I have to go, Todd, don't zoom in more than 180%. And sometimes I'll catch myself. I'm at 400%. I'm going, nobody's even going to see this line, yeah, dumbass. So, but anyway, I enjoy both methods.
That zoom in is funny because I've had that conversation with a lot of my friends, and it is like you got to figure out like don't zoom in past a certain point for that exact reason.
Yeah, you know what I know a lot of guys do is they put a pixel limit on the size of their brush. Man, never go below x pixels, yes. And then that'll sort of take care of that stuff. But Todd, we are freshly in the year 2024. What does the audience have to look forward to when it comes to McFarlane Productions in comics and toys?
Again, tons and tons of toys coming out. Got a couple of new designs that we're just doing in house that we're going to break out. We've got the aftermath of what's happening in Spawn 350. We've got probably going to have 6 to 12 new books come out. Some are going to be regular books. Some are going to be miniseries, whatever. We're going to be rolling those ones out, and then for sure there will be an announcement on the movie front. So all things are still going to be expanding. 2024 is going to be a bigger year in terms of output than 2023 was, for sure.
Awesome.
Good, bad, or different. I'm not saying that. We'll let the audience choose, but that's it. So it's going to be a big year. Looking forward to it.
Todd, thank you so much. It's a pleasure celebrating the new year with you, sir.
All right. Thanks for your time. Best of luck to you guys, too. Hope you guys have a killer year, too.
Take care.
All right. Be good.
Kayfabers, remember to like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell so that we can notify you when new videos are available. We are a daily YouTube channel with more than 1,600 videos at your disposal. We may have talked about your favorite comics. The way that you can find out, hit the magnifying glass on the front page of the Cartoonist Kayfabe YouTube channel. Search for your favorite comics. Check out those episodes. If we haven't covered your favorites, then let us know in the comments what those comics are. We'll push them a little bit higher on our to-read list. Ultimately, the vids are brought to you by the comic books that we make. And before you is a little sample of the books that we have out in the wild right now. I'm working on a daily strip these days. It's called Switchblade Shorties. Started January 1st of 2024, highlighting these young characters on a daily basis, going through all sorts of crazy adventures and solving life's problems without the supervision of adults. But don't get it twisted. It's still an Eddie P comic, which is to say it ain't that young adult stuff that you're used to. Also, on the racks right now is Hip Hop Family Tree Omnibus. Is out in the wild. We still have some stock in that after the holiday rush. 500 plus pages with a bunch of additional material. Thank you guys who have supported the comic already. I saw a lot of these as gifts during the Christmas season. X-Men Grand Design trade paperback, collecting all of my X-Men Grand Design stuff, is out there in the wild right now. And the newest comic to hit the stands in January is going to be Red Room Crypto Killers, trade paperback that contains the 3rd season of Red Room Comics. 4 stories in here. All stories are completely self-contained. That goes for all of the Red Room trades. So if you see any of these in the wild, scoop them up, give them a shot, then check out more Red Room Comics. Jimmy, what do you have?
I have my contribution to the Grand Design mythos. That is the Hulk Grand Design. These are sold out at the distribution and publishing levels, so pick those up if you find them somewhere while supplies still last. I have been self-publishing the 1986 zine, the BW zine, and my nonfiction anthology True Crime Funnies. These are all available at patreon.com/JimRugg. And my latest Street Angel book, Princess of Poverty and Deadliest Girl Alive, available from Image Comics, featuring the homeless ninja on a skateboard. Both self-contained. Read them in any order. Read them together and you'll have all the Street Angel comics that I have made so far.
The books are the most important part in keeping the Kayfabe channel alive. Support the books, you support the creators, you support the channel. There are some ways to directly support the Cartoonist Kayfabe YouTube channel, however. One of those is the Patreon. And the King Kayfabers on the Patreon get all the videos before anybody else. Mitigates the Kayfabe effect, and we talk about some rare stuff very often. The King Kayfabers are the ones that get that material first, and sometimes those comics are pretty cheap online before our kings get a hold of them. But what are some of the other ways, Jimmy?
You can subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe e-newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts, merchandise, hats, mugs, stickers, and more at our spread shop. That link is also under this video.
There you have it. All the ways to support the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. Jimmy, give them those marching orders and we'll be on our way.
Read more comics.